Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. I'm sorry about all of that. I just on my YouTube channel, it isn't coming up, and I had to race in to ask my wife whether it was or not, and it appears to be okay. So I am up and running, and I want to thank Paul for coming on board. And I just wanted to have a conversation with people about YouTube. And the reason why I'm having this conversation is that I've put a goal up for today to have I set a goal for a super chat of 10 super chats at around $5 each. Now, I need to let you know that even though I've been doing this YouTube thing for a while, I have very little understanding as to how the bloody thing works, and I'm trying to find that out over time. So there's 6 people. Thanks very much. So what I wanted to have a conversation with you about before I get into the politics and all the other shit that I need to talk about, of which there is a lot, I want to talk about where I stand in relation to YouTube, why I do what I do, and whether or not this has any significance to anybody, because I don't know. But this is the story. Now, I checked my YouTube channel and I discovered that I started this channel in 2009. And I was surprised, actually, to know that it was that long ago. And when I started it, anybody could go to my channel and they could search the first one I found. I started whatever. And it was done with a very simple camera at the time, and it was and the audio was crap, and I had this terrible background, and it was terrible. It was a shocking piece of work, actually. A bit embarrassed to think that I did that way back then. And then I just did little bits and pieces because I had my own practice, and I was working pretty hard at just trying to earn as much money as I could to stay alive, and I just let it go until last year. When I retired, actually, which was 2 years ago, and I decided I'd just focus a little bit more on YouTube because I needed something to occupy my time once I'd retired. And because I had a background in politics, I also thought, and as a social worker, I thought just developing a conversation around the things that interest me was really important. And when I think of YouTube, I need to be able to tell you this much, that in order to make any money out of YouTube is bloody hard work. And to be honest with you, I don't know why I say to be honest, because it means everything I've said before wasn't, but the truth is that over the last 2 to 3 months, I've probably averaged $100 a week. So I'm not making much money from YouTube, and it was never my goal to make any. In fact, the biggest and most exciting moment, I must confess, was when I finally, after I did a YouTube on Donald Trump being shot, I was able to be monetized. That was exciting. I never thought that I'd ever reach it. My wife laughed at me when I ever talked about it, and it just seemed to happen all at once. And this was at that time where he was shot, which is about 18 months ago. So as a result, I have spent, I don't mind saying, over $10,000 on equipment. Now, a lot of people, it's interesting, a lot of people can do YouTube just off their phone and earn more money than I probably will ever earn. And so I've invested in this opportunity to do what I can to make the best presentation that I can to you, to be able to offer something that has value. And I hope that I've been able to do that. And at the moment, I'm just making a plea that and it's the first time in all these years I've done this, I'm making a plea that if you can find a way to contribute to my efforts, it would be greatly appreciated. And one of the ways to do that is through Super Chats, which are now available on my channel. So contribute if you can. Now look, I want to let you know, I'm 74. When you get to 74, your end of days are getting closer, regretfully, but it's the truth, and we need to confront that realistic issue. And as a result of those years getting closer, I want to do the best that I can. I'm excited about this community that seems to have developed. I've got over 7,200 subscribers now, and I need to say this, that every subscriber that I've got is important to me, because for some reason these people have shown some degree of faith and interest in what I do. Now, I'm probably not the smartest person on earth. I'm probably haven't got the greatest intellect. I understand all of that. But one thing I do have, which I'm extremely proud of, is compassion and passion for what I say and for what I do. And I've expressed that throughout my social work practice and throughout my whole life. And one of the other things I have that I've had gone for me for well over 50 years now is a sense of creativity, doing things a little bit different, trying to find different ways to be able to express myself. Now, in saying all of that, one of the reasons why I'm talking about all this now is that I would like the community, those people that I'm speaking to now and those people that watch this video later, I want you to help me to better understand how I can do better. I have a lot of people. No, I'm going to reframe that. I have about 98% of the people that comment on my YouTube channel say things that are pretty positive about what I'm doing, or they constructively offer information that I don't have that contributes to the conversation. So what I'd like people to do is to offer me with suggestions, things that you would like me to do. I did a chat GPT thing the other day and asked it what I could do that was different, and it came up with some really interesting ideas actually, and I might implement some of those. But I prefer from the community, I prefer you to tell me what it is that you think I could specifically do. That would be great if you wouldn't mind. So let me know what you think. That's my rant. That's my beginning point, and I'm glad to see that so many people have logged on to have this chat. Now, one of the things, though, that is really important is to talk about politics. Now, the reason why politics for me is important, because I was raised in a political family. My father stood for politics on a couple of occasions. Wasn't successful, but he was, as I think I mentioned before, was the mayor of a city council here for about 10 years. He was thoroughly involved, wrong side of politics as far as I'm concerned, but that was his choice. But so I've been involved in politics for a long time. I see the significance of being politically involved. I started my own party called the Child Protection Party some years ago. It's still in operation, but I don't belong to it. Well, I belong to it, but I don't work in it anymore because I've got all these other things I prefer to do since I retired. But the reason why politics was important is because it gives us an opportunity to be able to influence change. And I, in particular, had an issue around child protection issues and people that were being abused by the system, children that were being abused by the system and ignored. So I chose to do something about it. And the reason why this is important is that we need to have a voice. I do my best to offer a voice about the things that matter to me. Now, they may not matter to you, and I understand all of that, and I don't do a lot these days around child protection per se. I tend to steer clear of that simply because for many people it doesn't have any specific meaning. Even though I think today I've got something on the childcare scandal, so I might talk a little bit about that later. But the protection and the needs for children's needs to be met is paramount to me. It has been for many decades because I've seen the damage that the system does. So changing the system is important. Analysing and thinking about the way this system works and how we interact with it is of importance to me also. And so I wish to be able to continue to be able to offer that to you in terms of solutions, and also to be able to have a conversation with you about the things that matter to you as well. So please contribute. I can't see anybody. Mick says good day. So Sean says thanks to Donald. Okay, so I'm going to start. I hope that rant was not too exhaustive, but I'm going to start by actually having a look at what happening with regard to the Nationals and the Liberal Party. And the reason why this is so important is that basically, I've said this many times before, that we need a strong opposition. The Labor Party, even though I admit that I'd like to support probably the Greens more than the Labor Party, but the Labor Party offers some progressive attitudes, but they haven't got the whole box and dice, far from it. There's a lot more they could do that is more progressive in our society than what they do. But the Liberal Party and the National Party, the Conservatives in this country, offer us nothing. But they need to be offering something that's a little bit more tangible, a little bit more realistic. They need to be offering policies in particular that are going to benefit most of us, but they don't. And the question for me is, why is this the case? Why is it that Susan Lee and Littleproud and others can't develop significant policies that are going to impact us all? It bewilders me, to say the least. And I would like to think that there is some semblance of social cohesion that could possibly exist within those two Conservative parties that would be able to offer us an opportunity to be able to look at things differently. But they don't. They continually disappoint me and they fail us on a regular basis. So when we're having a look today at net zero, I think we need to understand what net zero means. Net zero is simply the balancing act that should happen between government and that should happen between the amount of emissions that we put out and that being neutralised through renewable energy, and other processes, deforestation and making sure that we're not polluting the environment per se. So these I think this is an important system. And Tony Walker has just said net zero will never happen. The important point is to reduce emissions to take advantage of technology advancement STEM. Yeah, I agree with you, Tony, and thanks for that. I think that's where I'm coming from. So I want to have a conversation about the value of net zero and what you think the Liberal and National Party are intending to do and who they're appealing to in relation to this. Now, the issue is that we had an election earlier this year which clearly indicated to all of us and to the population in general that that we were in favour of the government working towards renewables. This is what was important. And I'm just wondering whether we think net zero is sort of someone throwing their hat into the ring and saying, I want to know what the Liberal and National Party think how do they think this is going to impact the electorate? Because it was clear at the last election that when they went for nuclear, it was rejected by Australians. So now what are they thinking? What are they hoping is going to come from net zero? So one side of the political stream seems to think that they want to do away with climate change altogether. There's aspects of the Conservative movement who accept that there is climate change, but they want to do away with this notion around simply having a target towards 2050 about getting rid of net zero. And they want to be able to incorporate coal and gas in the mix because they believe that is the cheapest form of fuel, even though we know that coal power stations are closing down. Many have closed down this year. Many are about to close down because they're about to fall apart, that they're hard to maintain and that they are not reliable in terms of the production of power. So with all of that known, why is it that they're going to go for net zero? What is it they're planning to do? And who are they planning to appeal to? That's what I know. Is it the One Nation people, the no-brainers who sit on the right of politics, who simply believe that everything that the government does is simply wrong, or that they want to focus on other issues such as mass migration and so on? So where does all of this sit? This is the question, I guess, that I'm asking. So I'm just going to take a peek at this moment at where this stands. So there's this title, this is in the Sydney Morning Herald. Hasty threat emerges as Lee fights to hold coalition together. And one of the other interesting aspects of all of this fight with Susan Lee is that the right, in particular Sky News and some other podcasters, are continually having a go at Susan, and Susan's got a target on her. Now, I think this is extremely unfair. I'm not a great fan. Watched her many times in Parliament. It's quite interesting to watch her now during question time, because she's far less combative than what she used to be when she was the deputy leader of the opposition. And she now is sort of far calmer, and she leads the attacking to be done by others in her party. So this is who Susan Lee is. But opposition leader Susan Lee is being pushed towards dumping the Liberal Party's net zero pledge as she fights to keep the coalition together and stave off an emerging threat from Andrew Hastie. But she faces a rearguard action from pro-climate action MPs who backed her ascent to the top job. So they're in conflict in the Liberal Party. They're divided. And as much as I dislike the divisions and the factions that sit within the Labor Party and how they have to debate and choose and they create and manifest this. I'm trying to think of a right word. The mess that is about negotiating who's in which faction, whatever, and what jobs they could eventually take. The same thing is apparent within the Liberal Party. So it goes on to say, top Conservative MPs of Lee's leadership team, led by Angus Taylor, Michael Cash and James Patterson, shifted their stance in the 2050 pledge after a dramatic few days in which the Nationals cast the target aside and Lee was hit with record low polling. And part of the problem here is that I did a post yesterday on the decline of the coalition. And this should be a concern for all of us, regardless of which side of politics we sit on, because it is important for us to have an opposition that at least is coherent, that at least is able to find areas in which they could be combative with the Labor Party. But this coalition has nothing. And even if you watch Question Time, as I reluctantly do, you'll see that there is no more fight in them. They are toothless tigers. They are placid. They are inconsequential. And they don't tend to have any great desire. It's almost like they're looking towards the election in 2.5 years' time, and they've already given up on any opportunity that they may have to win. They have. And as a result of that, Susan Lee's left sitting there as some sort of lame duck, not really knowing what to do, not knowing what to do, and wondering about what level of support she has for her, which is almost zero. The Nationals move convinced senior Labourers, including some of Lee's backers, to dump the net zero target as this Mars said first record on Monday. There's a growing sense that the net zero line just won't work. One party source said, adding that the next step would be convincing moderate MPs to stay in the tent as Lee works to stave off a leadership challenge. And of course, that raises the next question. Who possibly could be the leader of the Liberal Party? And the next question is, will the Liberal Party and the National Party actually stay together? Will they be able to manifest some sort of cohesive decision-making process that means they could at least get on the same page? I think it's unlikely. In fact, I tend to believe that it is inevitable that the Nationals and Liberal parties will split. And the thing too that we need to keep an eye on is whether or not, as it was reported a couple of weeks ago, that there will be some people from the Liberal Party who will migrate to the Nationals. Is that possible? Is that likely? And I suspect that it may be. Some of those little whispers you get in the halls of power turn out to be relatively correct. And so there are probably some people at the moment who are thinking about making that shift over. And if this is the issue that divides them, And there are some people in the Liberal Party who believe that the Nationals have the better policy and the better attitudes towards net zero and climate change in particular, then that is where they're going to go. Now, it is interesting to note that none of this is necessarily about getting rid of or denying climate change. They all accept, except for perhaps Matt Canavan, but nevertheless, the majority of them now accept that it is possible for us and is necessary for us to have renewables. So, but is it? I think that that's a reasonable stance, but nevertheless, will it last? Will they look to the gas situation and the coal situation, hoping that dominates the conversation, and then forget about renewables entirely? Because after all, the Nationals don't want us to have renewables because of the fact that they use up so much of their precious land, and that they see it's a disadvantage to the country and their particular constituents. That's the way they see it, but it's not necessarily true. No, Australia is not sitting ahead of other nations. Then the other thing is, and this is the other point too, that I think is really important, is that is having this policy means that we're out of step with other countries. And does that matter? I am tired, I don't know about the rest of you, but I am tired of the fact that we tie ourselves to countries like the United States. Horrible Trump administration, basically destructive people, not seeking to enhance our best interests at all, and yet we are reliant upon them. There's a fabulous Four Corners program that came out last night on our involvement with the United States in terms of building air force bases and nuclear replenish stations, for want of another word, in Australia. And what would that mean in terms of us being targeted by China if China decided to go to war? Well, the reality is there are about 10 of these bases around Australia. They're all up north, including Pine Gap in Alice Springs, and those are clear targets. Clear targets. And there's very little conversation. It wasn't until I saw this thing on Four Corners last night I came to realise that we're sitting ducks when it comes to any aggression from China. Now, I'm not going to suggest for a moment that China plans to do that. Wouldn't have any bloody idea. I'm not in Xi's mind or any Chinese person's mind for that matter. So I don't know what's going to happen. But the reality is that at some particular point, there may be some friction between China and the rest of the world, and particularly China and America. And given that Trump's administration is controlling all of this, who knows what that might lead to? And, that China requires some dominance over rare earths. And we have a lot of rare earths. So is that another incentive for China to want to come and invade this country? Don't know. But it does raise some really interesting questions about our own vulnerability in the Pacific and whether or not we're still going to be able to maintain any assistance from the United States if ever China did decide to take an interest in us. It's an interesting question. At the moment, it's clear that America is investing in Australia at some level because of the advantage that we hold militarily because of our position in the world, but our geographical position in the world. But it's unlikely, I think, for it to develop into any sort of conflict. But there again, who knows and who can explain on what this world's going to look like for our grandchildren and their children? I will never know, because at some point, sometimes I'm not all that convinced. So back to this article. In explaining the national decision to abandon the policy of pursuing the net zero emissions by 2050, leader David Littleproud said the party was not too opposed to reduce emissions, as I've said, but it was unfair that Australia was reducing emissions so much faster than its peers. And I just don't know why that's important. And that's what I was saying before, is why is it that we have to keep in step with what other countries are doing? Should we sit back and watch the rest of the world burn and say, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't concern us? And remembering that this is a country that chose to go and fight for wars that were 12,000 kilometres away, nowhere near us in World War One and World War Two, the beginning of them anyway, until the Japanese got involved. But and we've committed ourselves to fighting for other people's battles. And so why isn't it now that we can't make a decision about doing this ourselves? Just simply making a decision. This is something we need to do because it simply is the moral thing to do. We produce 1% of the world's emissions. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. We can be producing steel that is produced with as little damage to the community as we can. Green steel, green elements. We could be doing more of that. We have actually adopted a policy whereby we will try not to buy anything that is not produced more efficiently from China and elsewhere. And I think that's, sometimes you just need to take a principled decision, I reckon. It's as simple as that. Just say, well, this is our stand morally. We believe that the rest of the world can do whatever they like around emissions, and we could try and advocate and support their decisions if they plan to do something about climate change, because it does affect all of us. And, close to us in Australia, we've got the Pacific Islands, we've got a lot of neighbours who it's really important that we care for them as well. So it's often not just about us. That's an egocentric, Australian-centric version of events, which really should not be the case. We should be considering everybody, and we should make decisions about how we're going to combat climate. So this argument that we need not worry about it because we have 1% of the emissions and the rest of the world doesn't give a shit is I believe, immoral and completely irrelevant. But it's not. And this is the thing. It's not for the Nationals, apparently. We believe that we can peg ourselves to the rest. We believe that we can peg ourselves to the rest of the world. We're not going to be a laggard, but we're not going to streak ahead with direct reference to the Nationals OECD. So do you care? Do you not care? We're not going to streak ahead. So we're not going to set the pace. That's what he's saying. National Senator Matt Canavan, my favourite senator, who led a party review into net zero with his colleague Ross Cadell and Nationals Aligned Pay. Hey, interesting enough about this. This review they did, one of the major contributors in it was the coal industry. So how in the hell can you produce a report that is about climate change and is to be seen as bipartisan, if you like, and the major contributor to that report happens to be the very industry that needs to have investment made in it in order to survive, and that happens to be the coal industry. Horrible, but that's what they've done. Senator Matt, Senator Matt Canavan, who led a party review in net zero with his colleagues Ross Cadell and Nationals Aligned Page Research Centre, Nationals Aligned, said Australia was reducing its greenhouse gas emissions at twice the rate of other rich nations, a figure that would grow to 3 times the rate in the coming years. So I would suggest that perhaps that's a good thing. Is Australia doing more than comparative countries to reduce emissions? No, it's not, says Australia's National University Professor Frank Zotko, Director of the Centre of Climate and Energy Policy. I guess he's a guy who should know. Yet, under the International Emissions Reduction Accounting rules, Australia can rightly claim to have reduced emissions more than its OECD peers, as Littleproud says. Well, I think that's a good thing. We seem to be heading. So, and the point about that is that that's the government's initiative. We're heading in the right direction because the government has taken the right steps. So when Littleproud acknowledges that we're doing all this good stuff because we have reduced emissions better than the OECD average, doesn't that mean we do? But for Littleproud, that's us doing too much. That we should get the coal industry involved and let them tell us how much emissions we should put out, simply because they have an investment in that process. It goes on to say, how can both points be true? The answer goes back to the negotiations leading up to the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. Australia was among a bloc of nations that successfully pushed for land use change, and forest to be reduced in emissions counting. The provision became known as the Australian Clause, interesting enough, and it benefited Australia because widespread land clearing was still being undertaken while it had been largely abandoned by other OECD nations. Boom, boom. Well done, Australia. So, and as they said here, this is interesting. As a result, Australia's emissions baseline was set high, meaning that when regulations restricting land clearing in New South Wales and Queensland were introduced, national emissions plummeted from the baseline. In other words, while Australia has not yet commenced the difficult political and technical work many OECD peers were undertaking in reducing industrial and agricultural emissions, Australian reductions appear to be greater under the accounting regime. So, good for us. So, what do you think? There's a lot happening in this question in the comment section. To remember RoboDebt, there's comment there. Let's have a look. Trouble is, we cheat. Someone's talking about Centrelink. The Australian energy market operator is the Australian energy market operator, all right, fair enough, is seeking emergency power to switch off or reduce the output of rooftop solar systems across all states. Really? Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Hello, Centre. I don't understand what that means. Australian energy market operator is seeking emergency power to switch off or reduce the output of rooftop solar systems. Why? Okay. Can you explain to me why they're planning to do that? I haven't seen that. This is what I mean. There are far more people on board who have got far more information about a lot of this than what I have. So I appreciate that. Let me know why they would want to do that. And that's the other thing too, is that the government is pushing to ensure that people are using solar. So those people that have got batteries that are taking the electricity off the roof, popping it into their batteries and then sending it back to the grid, are they disadvantaged through any of that as well? Let me know what you think. So Mick says, the people, whoops, get rid of that. Try it again. The people leading is the pollies who are behind. Can explain that one to me as well. Red Edge is 100% owned. Okay. Keep having the conversation, guys. Keep it rolling. It's good. I appreciate it. And we'll get rid of that one as well. So the other thing is, so there's more conversations about the Liberal Party becoming Nationals like moderates. So this is just finish off with this, I think. Senior Liberal Tim Wilson has warned opposition leader Susan Lee moral authority is on the line as she weighs the party's response to the National Party's abandonment of net zero, while his colleagues preach cooperation with the Junior Coalition Party. This is where the split will appear, because there'll be people like Tim Wilson who are aching as he returns back to Parliament to become a member of, he wants to become the leader, I believe, of the party, and he'll see this as an opportunity to cause a split between Susan Lee and the Nationals, and so on. So that's where Tim is at. So I just want to go to this. I just want to talk for a little bit about Zohran Mamdani. Now, I don't know if any of you have been following what's been happening in the United States in relation to the New York governor race, New York mayoral race, and what you think of the way this has turned out. And I think the way it's turning out, we'll find out, I guess, tomorrow sometime as to how Mamdani has fared. The issue here is that progressive politics as expressed by Mamdani, has actually resonated with the not just the radical side, I think, of New Yorkers, but it's resonated with people who wish to seek change and particularly wish to see a fresh face. They're tired and sick and tired of the old farts that have run their country for such a long period of time. And this is a message for Democrats as well, in particular. You know, people like Schumer have to go. Bernie Sanders, how in the hell he stayed there, I'll never know, but at least he speaks sense, I guess. But there are stacks of politicians who simply do not understand the importance of progressive politics in the US. And I think this is a lesson for us. We do not stand or want to stand for anything that represents the Trump administration in Australia. I've said this countless times, that we are not in favour. We disagree with the type of administration that Trump implements. We are a country whereby we believe in a fair go. And even though we do have issues around versions of migration and housing and cost of living and all those things, and that our government in Australia is nowhere near progressive enough, I believe. But we could learn from Mamdani, because he is. You know, free childcare, free grocery shops, or grocery shops that have reduced prices at least, free transport. These are things that appeal to people in New York. Higher taxes. And this is something we need to confront here. So we could learn a lot from this bloke. And I don't know why, the other thing that really frustrates me is why we call him a socialist all the time. Because he is there's many things that we do in Australia that we take for granted. Medicare, social services, the benefits that we pay, NDIS, all these things could be called socialist programs. But we don't refer to them as socialist programs. We just see them as part of the Australian culture. These are things that are just acceptable. You know, how would we feel if suddenly a government got into power, which I believe that the Liberal Party wanted to do under Dutton, and take away our right for free healthcare, to dispense with Medicare, to put insurance companies in charge, like Medibank and others, to control that, as used to be the case to some extent. Now, I think we'd be appalled, and we would, but we don't refer to it as socialism. It's Australianism, right? We don't start calling necessarily. Someone might correct me. We don't call at the left of politics crazy Labor socialists who are planning to destroy the world. Even though if you watch Sky News, you think that's exactly what's happening, but they refer to them that. So they use, interestingly enough, Sky News used the language that we see in the US in relation to the Democrats. They try to use and implement that language in relation to Labor here. But generally, it isn't acceptable in Australia. We're not going to do it. We haven't done it, and we will never do it. We do not refer to those people that are progressive as being communists. We don't refer to them as being socialists. We don't. So what is there about Mamdani? Interesting character, and I think it's a sign of the times, and we need to note some of this stuff because it will happen here. I'll go and look around and you'll find volunteers in campaign shirts. So this is he has 90,000 volunteers out working for him. Look around, you'll find volunteers in campaign shirts that speak of rent freezes, and a $30 minimum wage. Whoa! That's a big deal in the United States, given their minimum wage is, $7 or $8. You'll see QR codes where people can sign up to door knock. You know what's really spooky? One sign says There are still New Yorkers who have never heard of Zoran, but they will. They will. Young, handsome and charming, well-spoken and unshamedly progressive, Mamdani is the antidote to Trumpism while tapping into many of the same populist grievances as US President Donald Trump himself. He has run a slick, social media-driven campaign built for the first time in the face of a generally hostile mainstream press. And that's the thing. And Mamdani is a Muslim. I forget where he comes from now. Someone will tell me. But he is different. He is different. And so I kind of wonder, is that what, is that the sort of thing that we're looking for? Are we looking for people, or should we be looking for young people like Mamdani who come from a different background? I mean, how horrified would One Nation be to find that there's a leader of a major party who was Pakistani, Muslim, gay, that sort of stuff would destroy them. For Uganda. Is he saying, thanks, Paul? Is he from Uganda? So, yeah. What would happen in Australia, and how would One Nation? It's horrible. It horrifies me to think that as appalling as the Liberal and Nationals are, that One Nation have picked up their votes. But if we had someone like Mamdani, maybe that would shake them up. And we've had some people in the Senate who are women, Muslims, who have endeavoured to stand up against Israel and fought for other issues, but they don't seem to get anywhere and they don't seem to become leaders. Okay, let me know what you think about all of that in the comments section. Remember, my goal was I didn't reach anywhere near it, top 10 super chats. That hasn't happened, but it's okay. That's not why I'm here. And keep the conversation going below. And just remember that tomorrow I'm doing a live feed with Avery, and that live feed will be riveting because it is about his pet subject, which is religion. I forget now the topic that he's going to talk about, but when I put the live feed up for tomorrow, I'll let you know. So please join us for that. It will be a lot of fun. So in the meantime, everybody, just take care of yourself. Remember to look after yourself and look after those people that you love. Take care. Bye.